Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today I am super excited to have done a tutorial for the blue Calla Aster bag, which is this bag right here. This is one of my most favorite bags of all time to make. When I first started bag making 3 years ago, this was the third bag that I made. This is actually the physical third bag that I made with that pattern. So I can tell you right now, I did this on my Elna 680. It's completely domestic machine friendly. It is beginner friendly. I did it as a beginner and I mean, there were some challenging things. I just took it slow and it was good to go. But this was my own personal bag. Again, this one is 3 years old. It's still holding up okay. I've come a long way since making this one, but it's still one of my favorites. And I carried it for like a year and a half. So the one that I made today is actually for a customer order. This is the one that we are making in this tutorial. The only difference of this one than the pattern is my customer requested no crossbody strap, which is what it looks like right here. So in the tutorial, I do tell you when we get to this point where you are going to have to follow the instructions of the pattern to make this. But it's super easy. If you've done any kind of connectors before, you will not have an issue with it. And her instructions are absolutely amazing. So before we get into the nitty gritty parts of this bag, let me show you some of the features of this bag. So you can see it's it's more of an arm bag. It's not really, I guess you could carry it on your shoulder. You can make the straps as long as you wanted to. Oh gosh, I just love this. So for this one, which I didn't do my first one because I did not know about edge paint at the time, is I chose to do the vinyl option for this top for this one. If you look at this one, you can see I turned them. Whereas this one, I just put, and I do it in the video with you, them wrong sides together, and then I use my Giardini edge paint on them, which makes it look so nice. And I went ahead and I edge painted along all the things that have raw edges, like all of these overlays. So I think it just adds a little extra shine and pizzazz to the bag. So it is a small bag. It is a very square bag. It is a birthing finish. I do it almost like her. She births it through the pocket. I leave an opening in the bottom and I close the bottom through the opening in the pocket. So it's very, very similar. It has this really neat shape because you utilize a heavy stabilizer in here to be able to come in. When you first make it, it's a little bit stiff, but with use, it softens up quite a bit. Like I said, I use this one a lot. On the inside, I did my typical decorative pocket because I always do that, and it's got 4 slip pockets, and you can see how nice and tight the lining fits in there. It's really a super bag. What else to say? Again, thank you, Celine, for allowing me to do tutorials on your patterns. Okay. What did I use for this bag? So this cotton is fabric that my customer chose out at a local quilt shop here. I do not know the name. The quilt shop's catches quilt shop, but I don't know the name of this fabric. I used a Dakota Marine vinyl in cherry red from Fabricville. Interfacing. Now I switched it up a little bit in here. I had some of this pretty in pink sew foam from Galaxy Kustoms, and I tested it out in this bag, and I tell you, I am in love with that foam. Like, it's, I don't know. I'm sold on it. I want it now. So going forward, I will be using the Galaxy Kustoms pretty in pink sew foam, where usually I use flex foam, which is fine too, but this one just, it gives it a little bit more, it's a little more substantial, and it has a lot of shape to it. So my foam stabilizer, again, is the pretty in pink sew foam from Galaxy Kustoms. My interfacing, so for my cotton pieces, my exterior cotton pieces, I wanted them to have more of a canvasy feel. The pattern calls for a medium woven interfacing. I ended up using EB Fuse Heavy, which is a woven interfacing from Emmaline bags. It comes in 3 weights, and I just find that it gives it just a little more, my cotton pieces a little more of a canvasy feel, which I really like. So my exterior cotton pieces are done in EB Fuse Heavy. My lining cotton pieces are lined with EB Fuse Lite, both from Emmaline bags. I used Peltex for my heavy stabilizers. We have some in each of these and in the top and of course in the bottom. If you have deckable heavy, that would work as well. Again, I used Giardini edge paint. I actually did on this top here, I did 4 coats of the base coat, 1 coat of the color, and then I did the protecting gloss. Hardware, all of my hardware, except for my zippers, is from Emmaline bags. My zipper and zipper pulls are from Blue Calla, which is the designer of this pattern as well. Yeah, so what else to say about this bag? I mean, I just love it. It's one of my favorites. I'm thinking I need to make myself another one, even though I really like this one as well. They're just super, super cute. Anyways, what else do I need to say about this? I guess we'll get to it in the pattern as we go along. I will put a link down below to the Blue Calla, link to this pattern. I will also put a link down below to Blue Calla's YouTube channel. She has tons of tutorials on her bags as well. So definitely check her out. Yeah, and if you like this video, you can always support my channel by buying me a coffee. I will put that down in the description below if you want to do that. Otherwise, without further ado, let's get to making this bag. All right, so you're going to need medium rivets, number 5 or number 3 zipper tape, and a zipper pull, 2 magnetic snaps, 4 1-inch rectangular rings, 4 purse feet, and your bag tag. Okay, if you're doing the crossbody strap, you're also going to need 2 swivel clasps, 1-inch slider, crossbody strap piece, 2 D-rings, and your 2 side connector pieces. And I do have a crossbody clasp down in the description below. All right, so I made my overlay that I do on all my zipper pockets. We also have our corner overlays, which I have coated the raw edges with Giardini edge paint. So those are mirrored to one another, 2 sets. You need your 2 zipper pocket pieces. These are backed with EB Fuse Lite. Your interior side panels, again, backed with EB Fuse Lite. Your connector stabilizer, this is Peltex here, and you'll need 4 of those. Your bottom piece, exterior and lining piece, my lining again is with EB Fuse Lite. Your top panel stabilizers, again, this is Peltex. Your side stabilizers, my diamond ones, again, Peltex, and your bottom stabilizer in Peltex as well. Okay, so our top side pieces, I have these in exterior fabric and I have them backed with EB Fuse Heavy. Your 4 strap connectors, again, I have coated the raw edges of these with Giardini edge paint. Your 2 exterior pieces, I've backed mine with EB Fuse Heavy. My 2 lining main pieces backed with EB Fuse Lite. And then my 2 slip pockets. Now, when you're cutting out these, I always make this mistake. So when you're folding the pattern piece down, you're going to be cutting this on a double fold. So you're going to be folding your fabric like this, and then placing those lines, those fold things on the lines. I have my pattern piece situated wrong here, but you can see what I'm trying to say. So it'll make it a little bit of a larger piece. I cut this wrong every time I make this bag. Okay, you'll need 4 top panels. I'm doing the vinyl version. 2 exterior side bottom pieces. 2 handles, and of course your crossbody strap if you're doing a crossbody. And I am using the Pretty in Pink Sew Foam. So I'm going to go ahead and make my straps. If you need a lesson on how to do that, I will include that link down below. All right, so let's place our Peltex piece onto the bottom of our bottom piece. Now I am using fusible Peltex here. So what I like to do is find the centers of the long edges and the short edges of my exterior bottom piece. And then I connect these markings with a line on the wrong side. What this does is it's going to help me center my Peltex piece perfectly. So with the Peltex piece, do the exact same thing. Find your centers on the long sides and on the short sides.
I am putting my fusible piece down. If yours isn't fusible, you can always put some double-sided tape outside of the seam allowances to hold it in place. And then I'm going to use my little notches and these lines to line this up perfectly, and I'm going to go ahead and fuse this with my iron. All right, there we go. And now we are going to mark where we are going to put our purse feet. So you just use your pattern piece to do this and install your purse feet. If you need to learn how to do that, I will include that link down below. So that is done. I always back mine with pieces of duct tape so the prongs don't poke through. So now for our two exterior main panels, all of our exterior pieces, we want to back them with foam. I'm using this pink foam. And now we want to put in our side diamond stabilizer pieces. So you will want to put a little bit of double-sided tape outside of the seam allowances on here. We're not going to be sewing through this at all. So on the wrong sides of your exterior top pieces, we are going to use the cutout that is on our pattern piece. Make sure if you're using directional fabric that it is going the same direction as the arrow. And then I'm just going to take this with the tape side down and put it in place using the pattern piece. And same with the other side. Again, making sure that your fabric, if it's directional, is going the right way. So again, peel off the double-sided tape, place it into the template, and then pull that piece away, and you should have perfect placement. Now, if you aren't using fusible Peltex, go ahead and use a piece of medium woven over top of that and iron it in place to hold it in place. Okay, so that's done. You can see my Peltex is fused on really good. And you can set those aside for now. Okay, so now we're going to take our two exterior pieces and we are going to place our corner overlays like so. So we are going to use double-sided tape outside of the seam allowances, so this will not gum up your needle as long as you're staying outside of the seam allowances. We're just using this to help keep it in place before we take it to the machine to top stitch. So make sure you have your fabric going the correct way, and then place these in the bottom left and right corners. And go ahead and top stitch all the way around with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowances on both pieces. Now for the foam, these are already basted on. If you are on a domestic machine and you're worried about the bulk of the foam, you can also base these to the exterior pieces using a zigzag stitch or even a serger, and that will help compress the foam to make it less bulky. As I'm on an industrial machine, I never worry about that, and I never had to really worry about it when I was using my Juki 2010Q either. It could handle the bulk of the foam. So the stitching will be very visible, so take your time to make sure you get nice and even around those corners. And then base down the two raw sides. So that is done. We have all 4 attached and they look lovely. Okay, so now we are going to work on our connector pieces. So again, we're going to take some double-sided tape and we're going to stick it down the middle here. And we are going to fold the top kind of squarish part of these connectors into the sides. If you use where it kind of cuts out before it turns into that arrowhead, it makes almost a perfect 1-inch connector there. And you're going to do that with all 4 pieces. If you didn't want to use double-sided tape here, you are more than welcome to use clips, and then you're just going to go around where I'm pointing here with a 1/8 of an inch top stitch to hold that in place. And there we go. So just on that little rectangular piece. Now on the bottom part, we are going to take our connector Peltex stabilizer pieces, put a little bit of double-sided tape on them, and center them on that bottom part of the connector, like so. Go ahead and do that on all four, doing your best to keep them out of the 1/8 seam allowance that you can. Okay, and I've already gone ahead and done 3. I will show you how I did these, adding the rectangular rings. So again, you're going to take some more double-sided tape outside of the seam allowances, and you're going to just put it the length of the Peltex. Now on the right side, measure down on that rectangular end of it 1 inch. This is going to be our placement point for our rectangular ring. So grab your rectangular ring, place it right along that line, and then just pull back part of the paper on the double-sided tape so the end of that rectangular part has a place to stick and hold the rectangular ring in place. Then just double check that they're all about the same height. Okay, so now we are going to use our pattern piece once again for our connector placement. So I have cut them out again like so, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark the top here with the 1/8 or with the 1 inch line right at the very top. This is what's easier for me. You can also use the cutout like we did with the diamond connector piece or the diamond stabilizer piece and do it that way. But I find that I can get it nice and straight this way if I just match up that 1 inch line that was at the top of the template and then stick it down with the double-sided tape that you already have on. And you are going to do that with all 4. Then what we're going to do is take this to the machine and we are going to top stitch these in place with the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance across here, down and around, pivot here, and back up for all 4 connectors. Okay, so one thing I am going to do, because I don't want that ugly back stitch in this in these connectors, we want a nice fluid line, so I am pulling my tails long, not back stitching. Working my way around, make sure your needle is down before you pivot. Take this nice and slow so it's nice and even. When you get to the bottom corner, needle down, pivot. I gotta go one more stitch here. There we go. At the same time, before I get too much further, I'm going to pull my top thread through just by pulling my bobbin thread and pulling my top thread through to the back side. Continue up the other side. You get to the top of that side, needle down and pivot. And then you're going to want to, I usually hand crank here because you want your needle to end in the exact same hole that your stitching began. Again, do not backstitch. Pull your tails long once you've gotten that. Hold on to that bobbin thread so you know what you're doing. And pull that bobbin thread to pull the top thread through, and then tie those 4 strands off nice and tight. I usually use about 3 or 4 knots, and then I use a lighter to melt my my threads. Right, so you're going to continue with the long threads for all 4 connectors. There you go. You can see we have no back stitching there, which is great. I have gone ahead and added 2 rivets in here, backed with Decovil Heavy for extra stability. Look how pretty it looks. You can put those panels aside. Okay, so now let's work on our sides. So we got our 2 bottom panels and we have our top side panels where we put those diamond Peltex pieces on. So you want them facing this way. So we're going right sides together and the long side of that diamond is going to be along the top of the bottom side panel. So kind of make sure you have it going the right way. It will only fit on one side. One side is slightly shorter than the other sides. So go ahead and clip that in place. And then we're going to take this to the machine and you stitch that with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Point our seams down to the bottom and top stitch right along here to hold that in place, and do the same with the other side. So here we go, that is done. You can see my seams are pointing down to the base. My diamond connectors, the long side is along the bottom part. And now this is if you were adding the crossbody strap like I did on my first bag here, this is where you would be adding it in. So go ahead and follow in the pattern to see how she does that. Okay, so we have our two main panels here and our bottom panels. You want to make sure you have the centers marked on them all, the top and the bottom. We already have the 4 centers marked on our bottom piece. So from each corner on our bottom piece, I'm just going to trim up my foam a little bit here because it's a little bit outside of my pieces. We are going to measure in from each corner, make a little box that's 3 1/8 inch squares. What we're going to be doing here, I believe it's called Y seams. Don't quote me on that. But we are going to not stitch inside those little squares when we're sewing our panels together. And this is going to give us a really awesome corner on the exterior of our bag. I also like to draw the little 3/8 of an inch square on my the bottom of my side and front panels as well. Okay, so you're going to take your bottom piece and one of your main panels, put them right sides together, match up your centers, and clip them in place. Okay, and then we're going to go from the start of one of our 3/8 of an inch squares to the start of the other 3/8 of an inch square, and we are going to sew in between those with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and do the exact same thing on the other side of the bottom with the other main panel. And repeat with the other side. We do not top stitch these at all. And if you can hear her, there's Miss Coco making her appearance in the video. She has to do it at least once. All right, so now we have, this is what we have here. So now it's time to connect our side pieces. So again, we have the centers of our top and bottom of our side pieces. I am going to mark my 3/8 of an inch squares on the bottom. And we're going to put them right sides together, clip it in place. And once again, when we sew this to the bottom, we will only be sewing in between those 3/8 of an inch squares. We will not be sewing into them. Now you'll see here, because we didn't sew all the way to the end, we can kind of pull the main panel back so we can line up the ends of the side of the bottom and of the sides. So again, kind of pull the main panel part that's not sewn away, like so you can match up those other sides so we know we're getting them nice and straight. And you will clip the other side in the exact same fashion. And go ahead and go across here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from square to square on both sides. All right, so now this is what we have. So now we can complete our exterior piece, or the main part of the bag. So you're going to bring the sides up like this. You are going to match your top corner down to the bottom. Again, when we hit this bottom part, we are not going to sew past those 3/8 of an inch squares. Again, because we have not sewn that last 3/8 of an inch, we will be able to fold the other panels aside so we can match up the side of the main panel and the side of the side panels together well. You want to kind of keep an eye on our overlays from the side panels and the main panels, because when we do our 3/8 of an inch stitch here, it is going to make them line up. So if you notice that they're not going to line up very well, you may need to do some adjustments. So it will look like the overlay is slightly higher than where the side faux leather part starts, and that's because once we do a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, it should even them out. Okay, so starting at that square, and you can go all the way to the top of all these with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so I am showing you how I would do this on a flatbed if I was using a flatbed. So I'll do one side on the flatbed, and then I'm going to show you how to do the other side without the table on as a cylinder arm, which I find it way easier to do it with just the cylinder arm. If you have a free arm on a machine, that would probably be similar to what the cylinder arm is. It just helps move it a little bit further. But if you only have a flatbed, this is how I would do it. All right, so now this is how I would do it on a cylinder arm. You can just see how it kind of hugs around the cylinder arm and just makes it a little bit easier to handle. Completely doable on both machines, of course. Again, when you get to the bottom, do not sew past that 3/8 of an inch square. Now you'll notice how all of our stitches, they kind of make really nice corners there. They all meet. So I'm just poking into those corners to make sure there are no holes and that I have a good seam. And then we are going to trim those corners back without cutting our stitching, just to reduce the bulk in the corners. And then once that's done, you can turn the exterior of your bag out. Okay, so then go ahead and poke your corners out, make it all nice and crisp, make sure everything lines up nicely. Okay, now this is where you want to make sure that your overlays and the side panels all matched up. My seam allowance was pretty good, so they are pretty even, which is what we want. Now, if they were a little bit taller, the overlays, just go in and do a little tighter of a seam allowance, and that should even them up for you. All right, so now we're going to work on our top panels. So we're going to take two of our top panels, which will be our exterior pieces, and we want to place our heavy stabilizer in the center. Now around that curved edge, you want there to be about a 1/2 inch seam allowance for the stabilizers. So I've gone ahead and fused that on. I've put those two aside, and now I'm going to do my magnetic snap placement on my two top panels that do not have the stabilizer on them. Okay, so on one of these, you're going to put the two male connectors, or two male magnetic snaps, and on the other one, you're going to put the two female parts. And also back them with a small scrap of Decorative Heavy for extra stability. I'm just going to make sure they line up well, and they do. And then of course I just like to secure the prongs with a little bit of duct tape just to make sure that they're not going to wear on the other side. Okay, now we want to take our exterior piece. It is going to be our front piece, and using the pattern piece, it has perfect placement for either a thumb lock if you wanted to do it, but this is where I like to put my nameplate. So I'm just going to mark in that center point, and this is where I am going to place my nameplate. All right, so now once that's done, take your front piece and your pieces that have the male magnetic snap. You're going to use some double-sided tape outside of the seam allowances again. And then you are going to stick these together as even as you can, wrong sides together. And then we are going to base the bottom of this with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. But that whole curvy part, we're going to do that with we're going to top stitch that with a 1/2 of an inch seam allowance, and do the same with the other side. So I've gone ahead and done that. And now what we're going to do is we are going to trim just that curvy part down to about 1/8 of an inch away from our top stitching there. Do not cut the bottom of this. So take this nice and slow and make sure you get nice even cutting and a really nice curve, like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to Giardini edge paint this. Now, if you want to do it turning, like this one was, where it doesn't have raw edges, you can follow the instructions in the pattern for that one. All right, so this is the exterior of our bag. These are our pieces. I've already gone ahead and my edge paint is dried. Now my nameplate I want on the front of the bag, so decide which side you like best and make that your front. Match up the center of that top panel and the center of the main of the bag and secure with clips. Now the end of your front panel or top panel should match up with the side seam here. See, like that. And what I like to do is I like to, at this point, open up the seams of my exterior and hold it with clips, because we're going to go ahead and base these top panels onto the exterior of our bag. So as you can see, we have our top panels right sides together. Top panel and the main bag part of the bag right sides together. So go ahead, do the same with the other side and base those with the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we are going to work on our lining. If you want to see how I do my zipper overlay for easy turning, that class is down below. So for our slip pockets, you're going to take them, fold them, or press them in half, both of them. Go ahead and top stitch along that folded line with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once that's done, we're going to center them onto our lining panels. Make sure if you've done the zipper pocket already that you fold it up and out of the way so you won't be stitching it. It may have been smarter for me to do the zipper pocket after I did these, but we can make it work. So secure these in place with clips. And I'm saying I cut my slip pocket a little bit long, so I'm just going to flip it over and trim it up to the same size as my lining piece here. Again, make sure you are not catching your zipper pocket in there. We are going to fold it up and out of the way when we sew this. Now I want to find my center of this pocket, so I'm just going to use my center of my two panels together and draw a line with chalk. Fold that up and out of the way, go down here, basting it, top stitch up and down the center, and up the other side. Do the exact same thing with the other one. So I like to go ahead, I like to put a rivet backed with Decavol Heavy just to give a little bit more security from our slip pockets as they will be used. We do not want those stitches popping. Okay, so take your panel, your lining panel that does not have the zipper pocket, and your bottom piece, and clip them along this bottom. So our lining pieces go together almost exactly like our exterior pieces, except for I am doing something slightly different than the pattern because I am going to leave an opening in the bottom of the bag for turning. In the pattern, it's great too. You can go ahead and just turn it through the pocket. I'm doing an extra step because I like to turn through the bottom of the bag, and then I like to close up my bag through the zipper pocket. If you watch my videos, you know that is my go-to for how I birth my bags. So now we want our lining to fit tighter, so we are going to do a slightly larger seam allowance. So I am measuring these squares to a 5/8 of an inch rather than a 3/8 of an inch square. So mark it along the bottom and then again along the bottom of all of our bottoms of our pieces for our lining panels. So we're going to go, again, we're not going to sew into those squares, but we are going to leave an opening here. I always write open so I don't forget. And then we are just going to sew from the square to those little lines we drew and leaving the bottom open. We are going to do similar to the same thing on the other side, except for we are not going to leave the opening in the bag. We're just going to sew at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance from square to square. So here we go. We got an opening in the bottom. The other one is all the way across. That's what we want. Now we're going to attach the sides in the same manner that we did with the exterior, but we are doing it with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So our stop and start squares are going to be 5/8 of an inch squares. So go ahead and do that exactly like we did with the exterior, just with the different seam allowance. Okay, so this is going to go together just like the exterior here, but a slight difference because we want our lining to be tight. So when we're sewing these sides together, again, we are going to do it right from the top and stop at those bottom squares, but we are going to start with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance at the top. And when we get about a third of the way down our lining towards the bottom, we are going to branch out into that 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And what this does is it makes our lining slightly smaller than our exterior, so our lining does not sag in the bag. But we need to keep the top at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance so we can put the lining and the exteriors together. They have to have the same width along the top. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that. Here's the hole in the bottom of our bag that we want. We have our opening in the zipper pocket, which we want. And now we're going to put it all together. So I'm just going to double check that my magnetic snaps still match. I kind of push in the sides like they're supposed to, make sure they match, make sure we look good, and we do. And now we are going to attach the lining. So open up your top panels, fold it back down wrong sides together with the main panels. You're going to take this exterior piece right side that is right side out and place it inside our lining piece so they're right sides together. So I'm situating mine so my zipper pocket is at the back of the bag. So if you have a preference, make sure you put them in the way you like them. Now the exterior is going to feel like it's a tight fit. Remember that our lining is slightly smaller than our exterior, but that's okay. You can just squish it in. This is one of the reasons I like to use sew-in foam rather than fusible foam, because sometimes when you're squishing a bag so much, it's going to wrinkle, especially when you have cotton exterior pieces. So go ahead and match up your seams and your centers of your lining and your exterior pieces right sides together. Make sure that your top panels are facing down into the bag. And also make sure your rectangular rings are facing down so they don't accidentally get caught. At this point, I am also making sure that my lining seams are open, and I'm securing that with clips when I match up the side seams with the exterior. And then once you have all the centers clipped, go ahead and evenly distribute that fabric in between those quarter marks. I guess there's more. There's 6 marks. It's not all quarter marks. So go ahead and do that all the way around. Okay, so that is done. So if I was taking this to my flatbed machine, we're going to do this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I would sew it from the inside and turn my bag like this. That would just make it a little bit easier to maneuver. I do not have my flatbed as she's in for servicing, so I'm doing this on my cylinder arm, which is super easy to do this because you're just going in a circle. So go ahead and stitch that all in place from clip to clip, making sure everything is staying lined up with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm just going to go around and make sure the lining and the exterior was all caught, that nothing accidentally folded in. When everything looks good, go ahead and open up that opening in the bottom of the bag and carefully start pulling that exterior through. Now it's always the hardest until you get the bum of the bag or the bottom of the bag through, but once you manage to get that through, it all comes out super easy, as you can see here. There you go. So then reach in through the opening and push out all your corners of your exterior. Press out all of your seams. Make everything look nice and crisp the way you want it to look. Make sure everything was caught at the join between the lining and the exterior. Poke out your corners of your lining and then stuff your lining inside your bag. And then you're going to kind of push the lining down and inside the bag. And you want to pull it nice and taut. So where I don't have my top panels, I am actually just going to use some clips to hold that in place. Can't really clip along the top panel, they're too long, so we'll just have to be very aware of what our lining fabric is doing as we are top stitching this, holding it as we go. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and top stitch right along here with the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so the corner seams are really thick, so I'm actually using my hump jumper a little bit just to help me get over that, to make sure it doesn't eat up my my cotton pieces. And take this nice and slow. You want a nice and even top stitch. Gonna come to another corner. Gonna use my hump jumper just to help get up and over that thickness and continue along my way. Oops, my hump jumper went flying. I'll pick that up here shortly for my fourth corner. Alright, so that is done. Make sure, look how great that lining sits in there, and my top stitching looks excellent. Now what we want to do is fold in these sides. Now we kind of want to squish them. We want to start creating a memory for those folded in sides. This will come with use as well. So I kind of fold it in, make sure my snaps go together, and they do. And then what I like to do with this bag is I like to just take some Wonder Clips and kind of finger press these side seams where it kind of pops in. And then I kind of like to set the seams. Actually, we are going to do that here after we close off the bottom of the bag. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, okay, so let's close up this bottom. We are going to reach in through our open zipper pocket, grab the opening in our lining, pull that lining through the zipper pocket, and clip together the raw edges of our opening in the bottom of the bag. And then what we're going to do is, from where our stitches stopped for these lining pieces, we are going to go ahead and stitch all the way across with the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance to close up the bottom of the bag. Once we have the bottom of the bag all sewn up, we stuff the lining back in through the zipper pocket, and then we top stitch shut the zipper pocket along that folded edge that we already had connected or folded over. All right, so here you can see my zipper pocket is complete. We're going to stuff that in the bag. Double check there's no holes and we are good. Okay, and now we are going to set these side seams like I was talking about before. So I just like to kind of finger press them and then use 3 or 4 Wonder Clips to hold them in place. Binder clips really work well here too. I just don't know where mine are. So this just helps those seams create a memory, so they will start folding in better. Again, these sides are always a little bit stiff, but they do soften up with use. So what I usually do is I'll just leave these clips on for a couple hours or so, just to set those seams, and then I will come back and I will end up putting on those handles, and then this bag is done. Just kind of put it where it's going to go so the bag can start creating that memory of how it wants to lay. Let those seams set, and then after that go ahead and put on your handles, and then you are all done.
There you go. That's it. That's all, folks. Wasn't that a fun make? Like, it's super easy to come together. and you get such a unique bag. I have never seen a bag that looks like this before. And again, this is one of my top favorites. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, again, that link is down below. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.